Now, what's the biggest thing you'll get criticism for being a Formula E follower? Simply, it's this sport.
And it's lights out and away we go. Furious action there.
Now, don't get me wrong, I love Formula 1 as well. However, I do tend to lean towards more Formula E. However, the biggest complaint that anybody says to me whenever I say to them, oh, I watch Formula E, they always go, but that's not proper racing. To which I reply, isn't it?
Oh, here comes the Virgin car.
Super late from Bird, up the inside into to back! And Evans comes out in front, and Gunter takes advantage and gets past Jean-Eric Bird. Side by side, Van Dorn trying to get past Lynn and back him into 10th place. And he's in front.
Yeah.
And now Freins goes for Lynn, not into back. Oh, into back. Through he goes. Bold stuff from... He's going for it now. Oh,
what a move!
Evans up through both to the new Nouvelle chicane. Da Costa to the outside and to the lead. All locked up, gets it stopped. Da Costa takes the lead on the...
And when they say it's not proper racing, well, think of this. Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, and Michael Schumacher. What do they all have in common, apart from world title championships? They all dominated, and they dominated for long periods of times. I mean, look at Max's latest outing, and the time difference he had over his own teammate, let alone the rest of the field. So it does go to show that, is that racing? Probably not. And that's the concern. You see far more overtakes in Formula E than you do in Formula 1. That's a fact. No argument. The other big criticism you get from Formula 1 followers who try and watch Formula E is, oh, the noise. It's not the same. No, it's not. But to be fair, look at Formula 1. I mean, I grew up in the days when you had the big V10s. Marvellous. Doesn't sound like that anymore with a 1.6 litre engine. Now, don't let me take anything away from either sport, because they are both fantastic to watch, and they both have their merits, and let's be honest, they have their cons as well. Let's be honest, both sports do have things that I would like to see different. I think the takeaway is simple. You can't compare both sports to each other, and I think that's the biggest problem. And that's the biggest problem when I always get when I say to someone, oh, I follow Formula E, and it's a case of they're a Formula 1 follower and they have little to zero interest in Formula E because it's different. But different can be good, and I think we've seen quite a bit this year as to the level of racing that you can get in Formula E, which, to be fair, I just haven't seen in Formula 1 this year. And, you know, I follow both sports. But the intensity and, you know, the ferocity of driving in Formula E, let's not beat around the bush. It is far more intense. It's a far better spectacle to watch in my mind than Formula 1, which sometimes does come a little bit boring in the fact that, you know, you've got these cars pounding around with 30, 40, even a minute difference with each other, and you just have to think, well, yeah, okay, that's great. And, you know, there are fights that do go on lower down in the grid order, don't get me wrong, there are, and there's been some very good fights this year for, you know, the mid-team places, especially with Alpine and teams like that trying to get into points. However, it does go to show that they're different, and the biggest example I can give of that is Nick de Vries. So obviously he had a fantastic season back in 2022, winning the Drivers' Championship in Formula E. He then obviously moved over to AlphaTauri. Okay, yes, not a competitive team in the traditional sense in Formula 1. We know that. Midfield team. No problem with that at all. Does provide for some good racing, as I've mentioned. However, consistently not been able to perform. Now, I don't know whether or not that's because he's used to the style of driving he's had over with Mercedes at Formula E, and the fact it's a different style of driving. But I think as a highlight, I think that just goes to show the level of difference that you've got between both sports. Now, you've got to remember as well, in the 2022 season, he wasn't taking top step podiums. He was winning by consistent, regular performance, which, let's be honest, in Formula 1 just doesn't cut it. In Formula 1, you need to be on that top step every single race weekend. That's where you need to be. And I think that's the difference. It does allow for more manoeuvrability for teams. It does allow for drivers to be a bit different in the way they drive. And I think that's the problem. You can't compare them together. And that is the biggest problem I find. And that is the biggest problem I have when people come to me and say, oh, well, it's not proper racing, or it doesn't sound right. Yeah, okay, it does sound different. Yeah, it's a different style of racing. You know, no different to IndyCar. That's a different style of racing to Formula 1. It's just a different form of motorsport. And I think once you switch that gear in your head and say, okay, this is different, that's when you really enjoy it. And that's what people need to be doing.
Okay, everybody, this is race control. This is race control. This is going to be quick. I want all drivers.